Happy 4th of July. I think everybody's got a big weekend in front of them. I want to touch on the budget most of the day in this. We'll be able to take some questions afterwards at length to be able to answer some of the questions you have today. With yesterday's signing of the fiscal year 23 operating budget bills is an exciting time here in the state of Missouri. Our administration presented the General Assembly with a budget recommendation that cements our state's strong financial position and provides tremendous opportunities for Missourians. We are proud that legislators were able to meet the historic moment and again pass a conservative and balanced budget that benefits the entire state. All in all, the vast majority of our priority budget recommendations outlined in the State of the State were funded by the General Assembly. This is great news for our state, and we are thankful to members of the General Assembly for getting it done. Now, while there's a lot to highlight with the budget, we're here to announce the vetoes and our future plans for a special session. In this last session, we passed 42 bills were passed and sent to my desk. And today we are vetoing 4. House Bill 2090, House Bill 1720, House Bill 1667, and Senate Bill 724. In response to our vetoes of House Bill 1720 and House Bill 2090, we are holding conversation with legislative leaders to plan a special session that will address extensions for key agriculture tax credits and the largest income tax cut in our state's history, and will provide permanent tax relief for all Missourians. After using a balanced approach through some of the toughest times in state's history, we are achieving record revenues and continue economic growth. And not every state can say that. And now is the time to give back to hardworking Missourians. Thanks to our common sense spending measures, we have fully funded the foundation formula and school transportation needs at the highest level ever, secured unprecedented support to Missouri higher education and community colleges, approved the largest investment in Missouri's child care networks, implemented critical training programs to develop our workforce, and historic investments in telemedicine and health care, not to mention infrastructure and broadband, and unprecedented levels of funding for mental health services. Even with all these historic achievements, we have always been able to leave some funds on the bottom line. And we want to use that to cut taxes and return hard-earned dollars back to Missourians' paychecks. We are proposing to reduce the individual income tax rate, increase the standard deduction allowance, and further simplify the tax code by eliminating income tax brackets. Under our plan, not only will the top income tax rate be reduced for everyone, the first $16,000 in earned income for single filers and $32,000 for joint filers will be tax-free. While our plan also means that we are vetoing House Bill 2090 and tax rebates, Missourians will see more return to their pockets. We want to be clear that no one was ever going to receive direct checks for $500 or $1,000 under House Bill 2090. Due to the temporary program being underfunded, some Missourians would have received somewhere between $100 and $200, while many others would have received nothing. Hardworking Missourians, including low earners, high earners, and vulnerable populations, would have received little to no relief. We can do better, and today, with our announcement of future special session, we intend to do just that, do better. We believe we can better achieve what Missourians were promised through permanent tax relief. The answer to record inflation, high gas prices, and increasing grocery bills is not to make the same spending mistakes as the federal government. In Missouri, we want to provide permanent tax cuts for permanent relief, not temporary stimulus. We're excited to work with the General Assembly to get this historic and meaningful tax cut passed to provide real relief to every Missouri taxpayer. Staying on the subject of taxes, today we are also vetoing House Bill 1720. This bill only provided short extensions for important agriculture tax credits within the Missouri Agriculture and Small Business Development Authority, among others. These two-year sunsets are problematic and reduce the benefits to Missouri farmers and business owners. Business owners and producers often need a minimum of 24 months in order to secure the equity and private investments needed for projects, let alone the additional years needed to actually complete the projects. It only makes sense that when a program is only guaranteed for a partial period of a project's development, businesses are less likely to invest. For every dollar invested in these programs, taxpayers see a 2- and 3-fold return. But with short extension, that is in serious jeopardy. Many of these tax credits and extensions have passed on multiple occasions without incident. We must extend these critical tax credits for a minimum of 6 years in order to ensure the effectiveness of the programs and to realize the full economic benefit to Missourians. I am a farmer, and I know that the existing struggles our families face. I will never sell farmers or ranchers short, and I always will fight for agriculture in this state. Our administration has always prioritized agriculture, and now, more than ever, we must do all we can to support agriculture investments in our state. House Bill 1720 is not doing all we can, and we can do more, and we must do better. Just this year, the General Assembly authorized longer sunsets for several other tax credit programs. Agriculture in Missouri is the top economic driver. It's only right that we provide Missouri farmers and ranch families, the foundation of the economy, with the same opportunities provided in these other programs. Why would agriculture ever be given a lower standard than other tax credits? Missouri's leading ag groups are on board with our course of action, and I want to thank them for that. And we look forward to passing a minimum 6-year sunset for these agriculture tax credit programs. At a time when we are facing historical high fuel prices, record high fertilizer costs, and the increasing cost of everyday operations, this is not the time to take half measures when it comes to Missouri's farmers and our agriculture industry. Our vetoes today are about doing right by Missouri farmers, agribusinesses, and every Missourian. It's time to take long-term actions and secure opportunity and support for every Missouri family. Our plan supports farmers, ranchers, everyday citizens, hardworking Missourians. People have been on the front lines for years. Over the last several years, we faced some of the biggest challenges in our state's history. Record droughts, record floods, civil unrest, COVID-19, train derailments of recently. All the things we have done, we have been able to weather those storms and keep our economy moving forward and increasing our revenues and state revenue. And some of the first questions will be, Governor, can you afford to do this? And I will tell you, yes, we can. We're still going to have money on the bottom line for years to come. And we're going to be able to work with the legislators to find a path forward to ensure that we have money set aside in case the economy does have problems, that we can get over the tough times. But I tell you, by keeping Missouri businesses open in this state, by keeping our economy going, by investing in workforce development infrastructure, is why we're able to give a tax cut to every Missourian in this state. So with that, thank you all for being here. Kelly, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Can you give us some specifics? How much over here? What is the tax rate that you're targeting, and what will be the cost of that?
Well, I would say we're going to get into, I'm not sure what the end cost will be. I think what we're going to try to do is build the framework and then work with the legislators to see how that looks. But again, I think when you start talking about the largest tax cut, when I first became governor, we were at 5.8 on the income tax. We have cut that twice since I've become governor. We were scheduled to cut it a third time. We're going to accelerate all the triggers that are in there. I would say for a base, we're probably going to end up around 4.8, 4.7, 4.8, somewhere in there. We're going to look at the lower income tax brackets. We're going to look at the deductions and see where we can go with that and what we can afford to do. I think we want to take a balanced approach with this. We would like to be able to probably set in motion where we can come back and revisit this in a couple of years to say, okay, is all this going according to plan? To be able to make any addresses we need to. But right now, the state of Missouri is positioned very well to give money back to Missourians. And I think we all know what we set in place over the last 4 years. If you let Missourians earn their money and spend their money, they'll spend the money and the economy will grow. And exactly what's happening.
And then when do you anticipate the special session taking place?
Yeah, I don't know that we've picked a specific time on that. We'll look at all the things, when we can get the legislators and work with them on there. I think the important thing that I would say we want to do for sure is try to get this implemented by the first of the year. We would like to probably implement some of these programs in by January 1 so people would see it in their paychecks right off the bat and be able to use it for tax deductions later that year.
Kurt just stole my question, so we're just going to keep going here and ask you about having these conversations with Cody Smith and other people of the budget. They were really adamant about that $500 tax credit coming back to Missourians. What was the conversation like when you called, not you personally, but your office called, and had a conversation saying you were going to veto it? Because they were so adamant about that. Yeah, you know what? We don't have anything wrong with the purpose of what he was doing. We've talked to Cody since then, with the budget director since that time. We've talked to him. We wanted to wait till after session was over, see what the budget looked like, and see how much money we had. We knew all along we would like to do a tax cut plan. We just wanted to make sure we get that process. There's nothing wrong with what they were trying to do to get money back to the people of the state. We basically fundamentally agree with that. We think this is a better plan, and we think this is something forever. Anytime you start doing a one-year plan of any kind, it can be problematic pretty quick. And so we think this will be a much more longer outreach for all Missourians, and Missourians will feel it in their pockets much better. And I would assume, knowing the budget chair, I think he'll be supportive of that. I think most of the colleagues, when we start talking about, we're going to be touching people, more than likely some of the lowest wage earners, some of the lowest income people. We're going to be talking about seniors. We're talking about everyday hardworking people that's going to benefit from this. I'm just telling you, for the taxpayers of this state, it is a win for Missouri.
Hi, Governor. I want to expand upon what Kurt said as far as the when goes. When would you want this to be in place for the taxpayers?
Yeah, we'd like to have it in place by January 1. Okay. So we'd like to have this all worked out with the legislators, get that in by January 1. We would like to see people, the everyday people, feel that in their paychecks in January. And then if there is reductions, we'd like to see that, be able to use that year also.
Your vetoing of this tax credit actually kind of aligns with a lot of House Democrats who were also opposed to it, saying it didn't help everyone. But maybe they won't be as receptive to an income tax cut. Why an income tax cut? Why not a tax on sales tax or other cuts that would be considered?
Well, we think this affects everybody. We'll be reaching out to the Democrats, talking to them also. I think that one of the things that they were concerned about was people with low incomes, people that are seniors, and I think this addresses those issues. And again, I think it's the fairest thing you can do for all Missourians. And regardless, what other tax things are out there, this is one thing that we can put in place forever and be able to move Missouri forward at the same time. Still have money on the bottom line, still have discretionary spending, and maintain what we have now. So, I mean, we've made some of the largest expansions in the state's history. Right now, we just need to get money back to the people of Missouri.
Just a quick clarifying question, Governor. You mentioned the eliminating of the tax brackets. So would that mean a flat income tax throughout the entire state? So the lowest earners and the highest earners, they would be paying the same amount of income tax under this cut. Is that correct?
Well, repeat your question again.
So the elimination of the tax brackets would essentially mean a flat income tax in the state of Missouri. Is that correct?
Yeah, for a lot of people. For a lot of people it would. You still would have people in the other categories, but if you're in those tax brackets I said of that funding mechanism, you wouldn't have no taxes. Okay. You know, if you're looking at that. Probably the most vulnerable and the low income earners, you're not going to have to pay taxes. If they make $16,000, you're not going to have to pay taxes. If you're $32,000, you're married, you're not going to have to pay taxes on that. And the rest of us will.
The base of House Bill 2090 was actually changing pay schedules for state employees, kind of along the lines of, you know, the everyday Missourian and that sort of thing. Is that still something that you has kind of carried over into the conversations about special session, or is it something you would support kind of down the line?
I don't understand. Repeat your question again.
Sorry. The underlying bill of House Bill 2090 had to do with pay schedules for state employees. Mm-hmm. Is that an element that is carried over to your discussions about special session, or is it something that you might support getting into down the
funding for state employees is there. I mean, the pay raises, if that's what you're referring to, on
the biweekly pay schedule.
Yeah, I'm not for sure. I'm not for sure. Well, I'll have to get back with you on that answer.
Okay.
Governor, last week we were in Kansas City and we were talking about public safety. And we heard from the Chamber of Commerce and their recommendations. And the president talked about how some of those recommendations had to be done here in Jefferson City, had to be legislation. Is there a chance that you talk about crime? Is that kind of in the back of your mind also for this special session? We heard from the Chamber of Commerce they were concerned about crime and business here in Missouri.
Yeah, I think the crime element we're talking about, the violent crime, I think Kansas City and St. Louis in particular, but I just won't isolate them. I would say Springfield, Columbia are all having a problem with that across the state. But we've already had a special session on crime once since I've been governor. We continue to work on crime bills every year to be able to do that. I think, again, I'm going to go back to what I told them in St. Louis, Kansas City when I was up there. You know, number one, you're going to have more police officers on the street. You're going to have to pay for that. And we're all going to have to try to figure out how we make that happen by getting more police officers on state. You're going to have to prosecute people that are violent criminals. They're going to have to be prosecuted. You're going to have to judges put them in there. If any part of that tier system don't work, then the system fails totally. And we know that's a problem in the St. Louis arena especially, you know, that we see that. So we're going to work with them. We always have since I've been governor, trying to figure out. We've had state resources on the ground ever since I've been governor in those regions. But, you know, I don't know that we're going to have a special session to do that. I think we got to have a combination to realize that we all got to do a better job, and it's going to take more police officers, and we got to figure out a way to get more police officers on the streets. There's a shortage everywhere you go in this state, no matter whether you're in the urban areas, the rural areas. And I think that's another reason the investments we made in the state right now. We have more law enforcement academies in high schools right now, just trying to build the bench for the future on that. Yeah.
Governor, I want to ask you a little bit about a different topic that has to do with saving money. It's the gas tax that went up another 2.5 cents today, and it's something that has bipartisan calls for a temporary suspension. You have, obviously, President Biden called for that a few weeks ago, but there have also been Republicans in the Missouri legislature who've called for the same thing. Is that something that you'd be considering to save money for Missourians?
Well, I think we'd consider whatever's out there, but I think also a more important reminder, if you don't want to pay the tax, you don't have to pay it. There's a one-page form that we've worked with Department of Revenue, so there is an option not to pay that tax for every Missourian if they want to do that. So I would encourage people at this point to make sure they apply for that. Again, it's a one-page item that you can go in there and fill out, much like we do now, whether you're a farmer, a business person, or anything like that. But you can get that tax money back now if you so choose.
We're going to go with Sarah, then we'll take one more after her.
Okay.
You've expressed your reasons for vetoing 2090 and 1720. Can you say why you decided to veto the other two bills, 1667 and 724?
Yeah, let me walk back. One of my, I think Senate Bill 724 had to do with financial statements in St. Charles. I believe is what it was. If I understand that right, and I'm going to give a broad overview of this, if you want more details, we'll get it for you. But I believe it was a point if you started a project and there was an overrun on it, if it was for that school system, I believe it was a school system or public entity, that you'd have to stop the project completely and have to go back and get a revote of whether to extend that or not. So I think the clarification was, what do you do for overruns? Do you really stop a project and in its track? So I think one of the things we wanted to see if there was other alternatives to be able to do that, especially when it comes to bonds and stuff, and how that would relate. So we had concerns with that. So I think it's something that we want to look at. I get the point is thinking if the cost runs just go way over, that there needs to be some kind of adjustment to it. But I think we need to figure out what is the best way to do that. But I don't think stopping a project in the middle of it and letting it sit for a year is probably a good answer, to that. So that was one of them. I think the other one had to do with Crentham. I believe that they're doing that. I think there's right now, if my understanding is right, FDA, that is illegal for the FDA has not approved that. So I think we don't want to get out of accordance with FDA, and I think that was part of the reason for it.
Okay, last question, Gail.
Governor, I want to ask you a clarifying question about the abortion ban in Missouri. There's been a little bit of confusion over the last week and a half from both providers, from local governments. You issued a statement saying that ban does not apply to emergency contraception, Plan B. Are there any plans for the state to release more guidelines or any plans in the future for an alteration of the language behind that trigger law in order to provide clarification?
Yeah. Well, I think all of you could help with that situation quite a bit. On the contraceptives, nothing has changed in the state of Missouri prior to that decision or after that decision. There has been absolutely no changes whatsoever on contraceptives. And that's as simple as I can make it. There is no change has been made in it. Everything that was legal before that decision is legal today, as it was then.
And when it comes to pregnancies that have to be aborted because of medical emergencies, there seems to be some uncertainty about that with medical providers. Is there any plan to issue more specific language on that front?
I'm sure the health department will come out with more clarifications or guides on it, but I think to go back, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there right now. People are trying to say we're trying to ban contraceptives. That's not true at all. Nothing has changed in the state of Missouri one bit for contraceptives. You can do the same thing today that you did 2 months ago. None of this has changed that whatsoever. It simply makes abortion against the law in the state of Missouri, which was already on the books anyhow.
So you're not concerned about it?
All right, thank you.